Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I got to talk to you for maybe 30 seconds or so. So happy that you were able to make it to this. You probably saw that we're going to be doing other webinars throughout April, so please join us for any of those, free, open to the public, anyone you know. Bring yourselves, your families, friends, coworkers. And I wanted to say thank you to Claire. Claire has been a volunteer at Center for Dialogue and Resolution for years. Very experienced mediator, very experienced trainer, and just a wonderful person in general. And she's agreed to do this just to kind of help us all get through what we're going through at the moment. So thank you so much, Claire, for doing that. I think that's it. If you're not familiar with the Center for Dialogue and Resolution, hopefully you visited the website, so I can't say much about it, but we do community mediation services for Lane County for the most part. Some of the things we do go outside of Lane County here and there, but pretty much any community conflict or interpersonal conflict you can think of, chances are we have a volunteer who can help you figure it out. So feel free to check the website and give us a call if you have anything going on that we could help with. And with that, I will stop talking and pass the mic to Claire.
Great, thank you. And so I am going to mute all of you for the moment, but of course, if you want to jump in with a question, please feel free to unmute yourself, or there's a chat feature. If you scroll down to the bottom of your screen, for some people I know it's up at the top of your screen, you should see a chat feature pop open. So today we're talking about communication and conflict. And I don't know if any of you remember a program called SHARP, Sacred Heart something recovery program. And in the mid 80s, Sacred Heart had this peer mediation program. And they had all of the elementary schools talk about peer mediation. And I was absolutely hooked. I was in 3rd grade and I could figure out how to tell Susie that I really needed to get my jacket back. Loved it. And so I've been doing mediation ever since. I went on to do my undergraduate and then my master's and then my doctorate in workplace mediation. I've done thousands of mediations for one-on-one, for marriages, for families, for large companies, for governmental organizations. So I was an absolute expert, right? And then I got married. Then I realized this stuff is hard. It's actually really, really hard. So what we're going to be talking about today, a lot of it is just common sense, right? How to speak nicely to each other. But I think it helps to verbalize it and talk through it, realize that other people are going through the same things, and to put a name to what you're going through, okay? So then it just makes it a little bit easier. So I'm sure you all remember JFK gave this speech, and he talked about the Chinese word for crisis, okay? And how it's composed of 2 characters. Again, I'm sure you've heard this. One represents danger, the other represents opportunity. And I wanted to begin with this because I feel like that's where we're at now, all right? So right now we're in the middle of a crisis. It's hard and it's scary. And some people are finding that this is an opportunity. They're enjoying the rest. They're enjoying the family time. It's a time of growth. They're growing in their relationships. They're growing and learning how to play the piano. If you're like me, you're making brownies every night and you're just growing that way. But ideally, you have found some way to just enjoy this time. Other people are experiencing the opposite. And if the videos are in the way, I apologize. You can shift them back and forth across the screen or minimize them if you need to. So other people have found that during this crisis, it's a time of danger. The National Domestic Violence Hotline has reported a huge spike in calls. Marriage court is preparing for a huge spike in divorces. And unfortunately, now we're all starting to hear about kids that used to see school as a safe haven, and now suddenly they're stuck at home with an abusive parent. So we know that right now things can go either way, right? We can have this be an opportunity, or this could be a time of danger. So what makes the difference? For me, it really is about communication. It's about how we choose to speak to each other. Because when things are so tense, little things can quickly become big things. Let me give you an example. Yesterday, my husband found out that his brother was sick. And normally, like, that's hard news to bear, right? But right now that's especially hard because right now we don't have that extra buffer. We don't have that extra grace that we normally have for being able to handle these kinds of problems. And on top of it, he's got 3 kids who won't be able to come and visit him in the hospital. And so it became scary. And so my husband completely understandably snapped at me. And so, of course, I got frustrated. And I could understand why he snapped at me, but what did I do? I snapped at my daughter because she left something out on the counter. A couple minutes later, I hear her snap at her younger brother because he hadn't cleaned his room. A couple minutes later, I hear the younger brother go out and yell at the chickens because they're not being nice to each other. Right? So something that should just be a little conversation that we should be able to handle is suddenly escalating. And the reason is that we're not giving ourselves that space for kind communication, for thinking through how should we really be handling this. Instead, we're allowing little things to escalate quickly. So let's talk about why. Well, for every family, they're going to have different triggers, right? Different things that just bug them. Something that for me might not matter very much, like it's a 2, let's say being late. I'm always late, so I don't care if people are late. So for me, that's a 2. For my husband, major sign of disrespect. So for him, that's a 10. And so for everybody, it's important to acknowledge that you're unique. Your family is unique. There's not going to be a formula. I cannot tell you, oh, if you do this, then you will start a fight. But if you don't do this, then you guys will be fine, right? That's not true. If that were true, then I wouldn't have a job. This stuff would be easy and we could all do it ourselves. This stuff is really hard. So as I'm giving some different ideas and suggestions here, what I'm hoping is that you can take those and pick out what makes sense for your family, what makes sense for your unique situation right now, okay? Some things will really bug you, some things won't. There are some communication strategies that will work with your kids, some that absolutely won't, okay? So I'm just going to throw out a lot of different ideas here, and I hope that you start to find the right formula for you, okay? So this is our agenda. We're going to be talking about how to communicate well, how to communicate during this crisis so that things don't become a dangerous time, but that this becomes an opportunity to improve your communication in these 5 areas. So first with your spouse, your partner, your boyfriend, your significant other, whatever that person is to you, okay? Your children, friends or distant family, coworkers, and then finally, let's focus on ourselves. Okay, so let's begin. First off, communicating with our spouse. Let's just acknowledge that it's hard. Spouses can be absolutely crazy or they can be absolutely wonderful. But what's weird about them is that they're not exactly the same as we are, which I don't understand because obviously we're perfect. How could they not want to be just like us, right? I realized this after we got married and my husband and I had our first fight. It was this blow-up fight. And so I went to the mall for a couple of hours, right? Did some retail therapy, came back with some great shoes, but I had talked it all through in my head and I was ready to sit down with him and really let's hammer this out. Let's make sure that this wasn't a wasted fight, but we've learned something from this and we can set ground rules and talk about our triggers. And I was like, I had my ammo and I had my agenda and I was ready to go. And so I walk up to him and I see him and he says, "Hey, I got you a hamburger. Are we good?" So I realized we have a very different language. For him, everything was fine. I loved him, he loved me, we're good. That fight was over because his love language is gifts. If he can give somebody a gift, it's a representation that I thought about you, I spent money on you, I am giving you something permanent that is a token of my affection, right? Just like a penguin handing me a pebble. For me, obviously, if you haven't realized by how much I talk, my love language is words. I needed to talk through it. I needed to verbally process what was happening. He's a mental processor. So for him, he had already worked everything out in his head and had moved on. I hadn't had that opportunity. I needed to finish talking through it. So this is a really important time to realize what the heck is your spouse, partner, other's love language? What is it that they really need? And we're going to be talking a little bit about applying this to your children as well. So as an example, my middle son, 110% touch. He just needs some kind of a touch. If I start talking to him, his eyes glaze over. If I give him a gift, it's going to end up in the trash. All right, that's not important to him. But if I can spend 10 minutes a day playing basketball with him or going on a run with him or something that's physical where we're moving together, Now he feels good. Now he feels loved, right? Now he feels like I have spent time with him in a way that completely transcends words for him. So the first little bit of homework I want you to do is think about, what is your love language? Okay, what is it that really makes you go, ah, I have been understood. I am now validated. Okay, what's your language? And now think about that for your spouse. What is it that really matters to them, that just makes them go, oh, I feel great? Okay, and now I want you to pause and think about the same thing for your children. What is it that they really need right now? What is it that is just making them say, okay, I am safe. I am in an okay home. My parents get me. Okay, so think about that one for a second. And then I want you to think about the opposite, okay? So for my husband, if I snap and I say something mean to him, he doesn't care, right? I'll end up buying him a hamburger and we'll be fine. However, if he says something mean to me, it's like the world is over, because my love language is words, which means that to me, words are also the most hurtful thing, right? They're the most powerful. They can make me go from cloud nine to Death Valley in an instant, or vice versa. Same thing with gifts. So I want you to be extra aware of this and realize that in this very crisis time, right now I've got a lot on my plate. So it's easy to say, hey, bud, I don't have time to play basketball with you. But then to him, that's a weapon. That means that now I have hurt him. I am taking away his love language and the thing that makes him feel really validated. So think about what the love language is for all the people that you are stuck in a house with for a very long time, and think about what it is that they really need. And that if you withhold that to them, you're saying, you don't really matter that much to me right now. I don't really love you enough to spend 20 minutes playing basketball. Okay? So that's your first little bit of homework. Just think through that process. Okay? What is it that you really need? So gifts, that's like a hamburger. Time, that can just be watching a silly movie with somebody. Service, did you get up in the morning and make them coffee? Did they fill your car up with gas, which we have to do like once a month right about now? But something like that just really says, I love you in their own special way. Okay. So the next thing I want you to do when you're communicating with your spouse, pause and check your motivations. Right now, I don't know about you, but I can tell I'm just more on edge. I'm just a little bit snappier than I normally am, right? I don't have as much of a grace, like I said. I don't have as much of a buffer. So what that means is that I end up snapping a lot. I apologize to everybody in my house. I'm sorry. But the reason is that I'm not so much frustrated with them. I'm just frustrated in general. I'm frustrated with the world. I'm frustrated with what's going on around me. And so I'm really learning to pause before I do that quick snap and say, okay, I'm just frustrated because I found out that my kids are going to be distance learning for the rest of the year. Or I'm frustrated because somebody at my husband's work just found out that they are positive with the coronavirus. And so I'm frustrated, but I can't take it out on the world, right? There's not a lot that I can do with that. And so instead it's like you have a balloon, right? And all these things are starting to squish down on it. And so the balloon is squishing out in all these different places. And so when I snap at people, it's because I'm feeling all this pressure, and the only place that I can safely slip out and snap and vent, unfortunately, is at my family. So I am learning how to check my motivations, and we'll talk through in a little bit how to find other ways to get some of that frustration out. Okay. So let's say that you're not the one snapping, but heaven forbid, because spouses are not perfect, they snapped at you. So now, of course, you want to take revenge, right? Because we're human, that's what we do. But when we're taking revenge, usually it's not actually to hurt the other person. It's because we want the person to understand that we're hurt, and we need them to understand just how much it hurt, okay? So when somebody says, hey, you're being lazy, you will immediately say back, oh yeah, well, you're a jerk. I don't actually think they're a jerk. It's just I want them to feel that same pain that I felt so that they understand how much it hurt me, okay? I'm not saying it's logical. I'm just saying it's what our brains do. It is our first reaction, because we need the other person to realize, hey, that hurt, okay? So this goes along with checking our motivations, is figuring out why we're responding the way we do, okay? That when somebody snaps at us, because this is just going to be a snappy time, that instead of just having that knee-jerk response where we yell right back at somebody, let's pause and think about, okay, why are we doing this? Am I just frustrated? And they're probably frustrated too. What are some other things that we could do? If we let it, conflict can escalate really, really quickly. When you are locked in a house with somebody and you know every single one of their stinking buttons and you know exactly what to say just to push them enough over the edge that they're going to go crazy, but not quite over the edge enough that people have to call the cops, right? We know exactly what that line is. So with family, if we let it, things can escalate very quickly. So what can we do to prevent that? Okay, so some of the first things that we can do, like I said, pause and figure out, why in the world are you about to say that? Why in the world are you so frustrated? And if you can name it, and if you can identify what the other person is going through, oh, they're frustrated. Oh, they had a bad day at work. Oh, they just found out that their brother is sick, and so they're snapping at me. Then it really helps you to de-escalate, take a minute and say, okay, how can I help? What is it that you really need? And if you're still frustrated with them and you're not quite ready to be that kind, maybe just pause and ask, why did you say that? What's going on? Why would you say that to me? Okay. I'm not exactly de-escalating. I'm not being Mother Teresa in that moment and giving them a hug, but at least I'm not snapping back at them. So I think that this is one of the keys, is just to say, what's going on? Why'd you say that? What's going on in your life? What happened today? And that's how you really start to find out about people, right? And that's how we can start to retrain our minds and retrain our habits so that we can have more effective dialogue, which is the key. So next thing, when we aren't heard, we escalate, right? It is just human nature. If my kids are downstairs and they're trying to get my attention and I can gently hear them say, Mom, but I think maybe I'll just ignore them and keep playing my game and see if it's really serious. And then if it's really serious, then within a couple minutes, I'll go, Mom, 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 right? They escalate, they get bigger, they get louder because they need to be heard. They want somebody to pay attention to them. Well, we do the exact same thing when we're fighting with somebody, when we're arguing and people aren't validating us. We might start out small, but then we will do whatever we takes to make this conflict bigger so that somebody finally acknowledges, hey, you are upset. You have been wronged. Something bad has happened to you. Okay, so this is normally the path that it takes. We start with those good, and then the eye rolls, right? And then the arm crossing. And then we might turn to the silent treatment. And if none of that is working, then we start to insult, right? And nitpick. And if that's not working, then we start to include other people. Well, I'm not the only one that thinks you're lazy, but the kids think you're lazy too. Or I don't think that you're just lazy. I think that you're ugly on top of it, right? If people didn't care about our small complaint, we do whatever we can to make it bigger, right? Whatever it takes to get noticed and to be validated. And eventually, the conflict has become so big that we forgot what it was about in the first place. We start forgetting the main issue. We start forgetting the names of the people involved in it or the actual facts, okay? And then the tricky thing is, if we're still not being validated and heard, then any threats we might have had can suddenly turn into physical threats, okay? So let's give an example here. All right. So I'm going to share this. Can you guys let me know if you can hear this okay?
Can't hear anything yet, Claire.
Yeah, hold on. You know, I just practiced this and it was perfect. So of course it's not going to work now. Well, I'll skip that one. It's too bad because it's a really funny one. I can see the little thing that says send sound and it's not. Oh, forget it. Okay. So I'm just going to let this play while I'm talking. So it's very simple. As conflicts begin to escalate, that we start to change our posture, that we start to change how we're interacting with people. You can see that here. I wish you could hear it. I should just send you all this link afterwards because it's really a funny clip. And we do this thing that I call TARDIS. So if anybody is a Doctor Who fan, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. TARDIS stands for time and relative dimension in space. In other words, as we start to get more aggressive, we use this technique that really skilled negotiators use to throw people off their game, and it's where you start to decrease the distance and decrease the time in between what you're saying. So originally you would just say something like, oh yes, I'm frustrated with you, yes, let me explain why. And then that doesn't work, so what do? We talk faster and we get in their face, right? And we do whatever we can to get noticed and to throw them off their game so they don't have a chance to think and respond until eventually they just give up. Okay, so that's the TARDIS technique, where we just do whatever we can to get into their face. Okay, so the summary there, when we are communicating with our spouse, I'm just going to go back to that last one. Okay, when we're communicating with our spouse, we want to make sure that we're taking time to acknowledge what is it that they really need, what is it that they're really frustrated about, and beyond that, what is it that I really need out of this conversation? Why is it that I'm really responding the way I am? Why is it that I'm actually snapping back and taking revenge on them? And chances are it's just that everybody is frustrated and we're not actually talking about it, that we're not actually communicating about it, right? We're not saying what's going on with us. And people need to do that differently, of course, right? They say about half the population are mental processors. They just need to figure everything out in their brain before they speak. The other half are verbal processors. They need to talk through things to figure out what it is that they're thinking. And so you can't force people to have the same conversation. Instead, you need to give people space to have their conversation in their way. So if somebody needs to just talk through everything that's going on, give them that space to talk through it. If somebody says, I'm fine, I'm not ready to talk about it yet, let's talk about it tomorrow, absolutely fine too. Give people their space to work through it. But then when people are ready to talk, that's when you need to say, okay, I'm going to put my phone aside. I'm going to push whatever, my computer to the side, and I'm going to sit and give you the attention that you deserve. All right. So now here comes the big one, communicating with children. We were talking a minute ago about revenge, right? When we're frustrated with our spouse, we get revenge on them. A friend of mine told me about, she was really, really mad at her spouse, like really mad. It was a bad one. I can't remember. She thought he cheated on her or something. And so she went and got shrimp and undid his curtain rods and stuffed the shrimp inside the curtain rods and then screwed them back on and then took all of her stuff out and moved out. And you just wonder, like, how long did the guy just sniff around the room and go, I smell something, but where is it coming from? Okay, so that's an example of revenge, right? It's a very passive aggressive, does not communicate our interests in any way, does not get us what we want, but it's still something that we often do in a fight. And it typically rolls up, meaning that the person who hurt us, we roll revenge back up to them. Anger is often the opposite. Anger often rolls downwards. So I gave you the example at the beginning, and I promise we do more than fight. It's just easy to use my fights with my husband as an example for this. So I told you about how my husband found out his brother was sick, right? So he snapped at me, and I was angry with him. Okay, but I can't tell him I'm angry with him. He's hurt. He just found out his brother was sick. I can't yell at him. So what do? I immediately take that anger and I yell at my daughter. I'm not saying it was healthy. It's just, it rolls downwards. So she yells at her younger brother yells at the chickens. Anger rolls downwards, right? We find some place to vent our anger if we're not careful. But, so a lot of people in my classes, I teach over at the law school, a lot of people in my classes say, oh, well, what can I do to stop anger? And so I apologize if I've given that impression. That's not what I'm saying we should do. Instead, I'm not a golfer, so I've probably messed up these terms a lot. But instead, I kind of picture anger like a golfing green, okay? And as you look out, you can see these red flags. And the red flags are signs to you of where you need to go. And anger to me is that same thing. It's that red flag, not to be avoided, but to say, there's something happening there. There's something going on there that needs a little bit of attention. And so it's peeking its head up as a red flag. And so when we're angry, it's not good or it's not bad. It's just your body's way of saying, hey, I'm upset. You got to stop and take care of me and find out what's going on. So when we start getting angry, even if we want to turn to our kids and vent and frustrate all of our emotions on them, instead it's a sign that, okay, what's really going on here? Why am I feeling this anger? Okay, I'm feeling angry because my husband is frustrated, and so he vented at me. And I'm angry and feeling like it's not fair because even though I'm frustrated, I've chosen not to vent at him. Okay, that's what's going on. So I am feeling like things aren't fair now. And now that I've identified it, right, my brain can let it go. And at some point, have a healthy conversation with my husband when I'm not upset, instead of saying, hey, dang daughter, why did you leave stuff all over the island? Okay, so instead of letting my anger roll downward, I'm using it as a red flag for me to figure out what's going on. Okay, next, when we're talking with our kids, let's remember this is a really scary time for them. Some of them, their love language is words, and they are able to tell you in 1,000 ways why. Some of them, like my son, the one whose love language is touch, I just realized he's been staying up all night. And at first I thought, okay, he's just excited. He doesn't have to go to school. And then I realized he's actually really scared. And he's in a room by himself. And so he's been staying up all night, waiting until one of us wakes up. And then he'll come in at 6 a.m. and lay his head down on my lap and fall asleep because he's afraid. He just wants somebody to be around him. He's not able to communicate that, right? He doesn't have the words to express that. But he is upset and he's frustrated and he's unsure how to communicate with that. But when your kids do show some kind of emotion, right? They're frustrated, they're yelling at each other. You mentioned that school is canceled again, and they have a reaction. I think it's important to acknowledge it. I think it's important to spend a little bit of time there. We don't want to push it, right? We don't want to dig into it and tell me all of your feelings on this matter and let me psychoanalyze you. No, but it's important to spend a little bit of time there and let them know that that emotion is safe. And then if we can, even name it. Boy, bud, I'm really sorry that you're going through this. It sounds like this must be a really frustrating time right now. Boy, I know that you were expecting to hear from your teachers today and you didn't. And I know that you feel a little bit of abandoned right now, but I think they're going to call you tomorrow, okay? Or maybe let's call them. And if you can name that emotion, then there's a psychological trigger in your brain that goes, oh, thank you. I have been understood. Somebody gets it. Somebody understands how much I was wronged. And it doesn't necessarily fix things, but once we've named it, then we can deal with it, right? What's that army saying about when you define a problem, you're halfway to solving it? It's the same thing with our emotions, right? If we can help our kids understand what they're feeling, then they're halfway through dealing with them. If we can help our kids understand that they're lonely, they're scared, their schedule is completely flipped upside down, and that's hard enough on us, but we know it's even more important for our kids. And if we can name that for them, then we can help them to understand why this is so scary. Okay, I have another video here that I'm just going to skip because I must have messed up my sound somehow. I was playing with my settings beforehand. The piece that I wanted to share with you about this is that right now for a lot of kids, they're just saying it doesn't feel fair, okay? In this video, we see that they're doing this cucumber grape experiment where the monkey gives a rock. And as soon as they give a rock, then the first monkey gets cucumber. The next monkey gets a grape, okay? And so that monkey's obviously happy because, dude, grapes are better than cucumbers. So that monkey gives her a rock again. And again, the monkey gets a cucumber, tries it. Says, well, that cucumber's stupid. So now the monkey's upset, right? The monkey feels like things aren't fair. Something is wrong and I don't understand why. What did I do? Pay attention to me. You need to help me understand why things don't feel fair. So again, the other monkey gives a rock and gets a grape. So now that monkey tests the rock, says, what's going on? Did I do something wrong? How have I messed up that all I'm getting are these stupid cucumbers? Take back your stupid cucumber. Okay. So our kids are in the exact same spot right now. They're saying, what is happening? I don't understand. Why are you treating me this way? How come life keeps giving me cucumbers? How come school is canceled? How come I can't have my senior year? How come things are different and scary? And how come I feel like I don't have any control over it? So it's this very primal need with us to feel like things are fair and things are okay. And as parents, unfortunately, we can't fix it. We can't take away the coronavirus. We can't make school happen again. But what we can do is at least acknowledge it, help our kids know that this isn't fair what they're dealing with, and that this is a scary time. And on top of that, man, It's okay to feel scared, and it is okay. And the more as parents we show them that, then the more they're going to be okay with it. So what I mean by that is, I think a lot of times as parents, we have to act like we've got it all figured out, right? We've got it completely together. And we want our kids to trust us, and we want our kids to know that things are safe. And so we can't show any weakness. And I think, unfortunately, that creates kids that are kind of handicapped, because then they haven't learned how to show emotion. They don't think emotions are okay. They don't think it's all right to be scared or to be lonely or to say, I am really frustrated right now, or I'm really upset, or this just doesn't feel fair, and I'm not okay with this. Because if they're able to express it, then they can do something about it, right? If they've identified what the problem is, then they can start to fix the problem. And so as parents, I think it's fantastic if you can just pause and say, hey, guys, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. I need to take 5 minutes. Or, guys, I'm actually feeling pretty lonely. I think we need to call somebody. Or, I'm just really frustrated. I'm kind of at the end of my rope. Can we all go on a walk and talk through what's going on with you, right? And then, because let's face it, no matter how much we tell our kids something, they're not going to listen to that. They mimic your actions. And so if your actions are making emotions be okay, that's what they'll mimic. That's what they will start to emulate. So the more we can talk through this with our kids and tell them how we're feeling right now, the more they know that it's okay for them to talk through it. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so now some of you are saying, that is well and nice for your kids, Claire, but you do not understand how crazy my kid is. So, and maybe it's your kid. Maybe it's the mother-in-law that had to move in with you. Maybe it is your crazy husband or your crazy wife. The fact of the matter is, some people are just not fun to be stuck in a house with, you know? If you were on a deserted island with them, you would rather try to swim home. Some people are just difficult. Totally get that. Couple things we can do here. First, I hope that you all have seen this graphic. I absolutely love it. I couldn't find the original, so I stole it from somewhere, but I will try to find the original. So, first piece, just because people are doing the crazy around you does not mean that you have to pass it on. Obviously, right now, practice what I preach and not what I do, because I told you that just the other day, my husband snapped at me and I turned and passed it on to my kids. And that's not what we want, right? Just because people are being cranky around you does not mean that you have to pass it to your kids or to your spouse or to your chickens or whomever. Instead, we can just acknowledge what's happening. Oh, right now they are doing the crazy. They are being frustrated. They are venting. They have had a bad day at work. They have all these emotions and they don't know how to talk about them. They don't know how to experience them. And so they are being horrible to each other. But I'm going to choose to make a stand and not pass this on to my kids, not even absorb this fire. Instead, I'm just going to step back. I'm going to step back from all of it, and I'm going to choose how I want to respond. So that's what works really well for spouses and whatnot, when you can just take a step back and say, dude, I need 10 minutes, or I need to go take a bubble bath, or I need to go take a walk, because I don't want to get mixed up in all of this. This is not healthy for me right now. And if I stay, I probably will get mixed up in it. So I'm going to take 10 minutes. Another one, and I really like this. So it's called the Biff method. It's by Bill Eddy. If you want more information on him, I'll just send it in the chat. Bill is without a doubt, Bill is without a doubt the expert on high conflict personalities. And he has so many webinars and suggestions that go into this quite a bit deeper. He walks through a lot of suggested conversations, suggested things that you can do to help yourself psychologically calm down. But here's what he said it all boils down to: the Biff method, that when somebody is just, they're out of control, or they're mean, or they're narcissistic, or they're passive aggressive, or they're putting shrimp in your curtain rods, or they're just treating you horribly, that the way you want to frame your conversation with them is remembering these 4 things. Keep it brief. You don't want to give them a lot of ammo to fight back with, right? So I want to share a little bit more about that, the keep it brief piece. And let me add this in the chat as well. Here's another method that I love called straight no chaser. What this one means is that a lot of the times when we're telling somebody something, we feel like our complaint isn't good enough, so we add on all this other stuff. Okay, let's say, as an example, let's say I came home the other day and my husband hadn't taken the garbage out. And so I'm frustrated with him, right? And so I could just say nicely, like a mature adult, hey, could you take the garbage out? Or I've had a really long day. Would you mind taking the garbage out this time? I could say that. Or I could add on all this other stuff, all the other chasers, and say, I'm so frustrated with you that you never take the garbage out. And it's just ridiculous that you don't help at all around here. And I don't think one time you've even gone to any of the kids' rooms and taken any of their garbage out. It's like you just expect this place to be a big garbage dump unless I'm the one who personally steps in and takes care of everything. That really rolled off the tongue, didn't it? It's like I've had practice. I haven't, I promise. So what I just did there was, instead of giving him a straight message and a straight request that he could do something, I added on all this fluff, right? I added on all these chasers, because just complaining about the garbage this one time doesn't feel big enough. I kind of feel silly complaining about it. It feels a little bit vulnerable that I would be frustrated about something so small. But if I make it huge, like, whoa, dude, what's wrong with you? How come you never take out the garbage ever? How come you never help? How come you're so lazy? Then what's he going to say? He's going to completely miss my request because I hid it in so much other stuff. And instead he's going to say, that's not true. I took the garbage out last month. So now where do I go? I just shot myself in the foot, right? Because I said, you never take the garbage out. And instead he said, that's not true. I took it out last month. So now I'm kind of dead in the water, right? I can't complain anymore because he just negated my whole argument because I made it too big. I gave him too much ammo to respond against. So what he means by brief here is we want to have straight, no chaser arguments. Get rid of all the fluff, okay? That just dilutes your message. People are not going to hear what you want to say. Instead, we just say, hey, babe, tired? I would really like it if you could take out the garbage. And then try to get in the habit of just zipping those lips, which is so stinking hard. But if you actually want your message to get across, if you want any change in those relationships, man, this really helps. This straight no chaser method really, really helps. And then if that doesn't help, go to like the real straight no chaser, but that's, that is a different conversation. We're not going there right now. Okay, so the next piece, informative. What does that one mean? Informative means that you are just giving the facts. You're not giving your analysis of them. You're not adding on, I think that you didn't take the garbage out because you are lazy and you expect me to do everything. Okay, no, we're not going there. We're just giving the facts. I am tired. The garbage has not gone out yet and it needs to go out before tomorrow morning. I would really like your help. That's informative. Those are the facts, okay? And especially when you have high conflict personalities, just giving them the facts is a lot easier for their brains to process. Okay, a lot of people who get triggered very easily get triggered much more by emotional statements than by factual statements. And so just providing that information allows them to process it and do something with it. And then, man, you got a much higher chance of getting what you want, of actually getting the garbage out of the house. The next thing, friendly. Now this one's tricky, right? Because when you're approaching somebody, especially when they're really triggered, and a lot of people are really triggered right now, and you don't want to approach them in this like low power stance where I'm so meek and I'm saying everything that you do is perfect and oh, it would just mean so much to me, dear, if you would take the garbage out. Nah, we're not going there. But you also don't want to come across from a high power stance saying, hey, I told you you have to take the garbage out. Why aren't you doing that? Instead, we're just trying to make power irrelevant to the conversation. Just coming across as one friend to another. Hey, I'm tired. I'd really like it if you take the garbage out. In other words, I'm treating people with the respect that I want to be treated with. And what we're doing there is we're starting to model the type of conversation that we want. In other words, I am trying to trigger those mirror neurons in the other person. Okay, I haven't been out dancing in forever, but I remember when I used to go out dancing that you'd see one person like do a certain kind of dance, and then within a couple minutes, you'd see everybody around the room doing the same kind of dance, right? Because we have these mirror neurons. It's what allows us to survive in this world. It's how my kids have learned to brush their teeth and tie their shoes, because they watch what the people around them do and then they emulate it. So subconsciously, when we see someone take the first step, then our brain starts to emulate it because of these fantastic mirror neurons. So when I initiate the conversation, whatever tone I set, there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to get that same tone back. Maybe not, but I have given myself the best chance possible of having a productive conversation. Okay, so that's what we mean by friendly. I'm not taking the low power stance or the high power stance. I am not coming across in a directive manner. I'm not coming across in a judgmental manner. I am just giving a friendly bit of information. But here's the other key piece here. You want to be firm. So we watch a lot of Avengers kind of movies in my house, right? I think they're exciting. Plus I have young boys. And so this is like the kind of movie that we can all watch together. And not once have I seen Thor sit down and say, well, I would really like to hit you in the face with this hammer, but tell me how you feel about that. What is your interest in this situation? No, Thor is going to come in and do whatever he wants, right? He's a very hard negotiator. And so we are taught through life, through media, through our parents, et cetera, to either be a very hard negotiator where you get what you want no matter the cost, or you build up the relationship and you're a team player and you help to support other people's dreams and you support their interest. So we are taught to be one or the other. We are taught to be a soft negotiator where I'd kind of like this, but hey, if that doesn't work for you, that's okay. It's no big deal. Or we are taught to be a hard negotiator where it's my way or the highway. And I don't care if I run over 1,000 people to get to the goal because the ends justify the means. And so we're taught that one of those is okay. And typically that means that we have emulated one of those, that in most situations we are a soft negotiator or a hard negotiator because that's what we saw our parents do and that's what worked, or that's what we saw on TV. So that's what we learned. And it's really frustrating because that is just setting yourself up for major power imbalances for the rest of your life, or revenge down the road, or bitterness down the road, or broken relationships, or major crevices coming in between you because both sides cannot talk about what they want. So that's why I really like this firm idea that when you are presenting what you need, you're firm about it. In other words, I want to hear what you have to say, but I'm also not going to back off on what I need as well. Okay. I understand that you're tired, and yes, that's important, but I took the garbage out last week, and I think it really is your turn. And I'm okay being firm on that because my interests are important. Your interests, just as important. Neither one has more power here. Instead, I'm being a firm negotiator by standing up for your interests as well as my interests, right? Now, if we could change the whole Avenger series and have Thor start to listen to other people's interests, as a mediator, I would love it, but I realize the whole franchise would die. So we have to be the heroes now and figure out how to really stand up for other people's interests as well as our own interests. So the summary there is, when you're dealing with high conflict people, remember those 4 bits: brief, informative, friendly, and firm. Okay? Short conversation, stick to the facts, kind demeanor, but don't let go of your interests in the process. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go through this part kind of quickly because I want to make sure we have some time for questions. So I don't know about you, but I have been having a very hard time communicating with my family. We have the same values, but it is just bubbling up in very different ways. They have very different behaviors. And it's tricky because my instinct is to say, Mom, what's wrong with you? Just kidding, she's amazing. It's to say, how come you're understanding things in a different way than I am? How come you have reached a different conclusion? And we know that the second somebody feels attacked, they're going to throw their walls right up, right? And then they won't hear a single thing that you have to say. So it doesn't work in the least bit. And we know this. I am just reiterating it so you have the vocabulary to describe it. We know not to attack people. We know not to attack their values. Instead, when you have a different understanding as the other people in your family, ask them about their behavior. Explain that to me. How do you think that's helpful? How do you think that's working right now? Explain to me how you have arrived at that conclusion. And who knows, maybe you will learn something and change some of your behaviors, or maybe it will cause them to question their behaviors and realize that they're not really in line with their values, okay? So the point is, when you're having a conversation with family and they're just doing things right now that you don't understand, and I'm thinking about distant family, online friends, things like that, this is not the time to attack people on who they are, on their identity. Instead, really ask them why. Ask them why they are doing this thing. Ask them why they are holding up inside and they've duct taped every crevice in the house, or ask them why they are, I don't know, dancing in the streets naked, right? Just understand a little bit about what's going on. And through some of those open-ended questions, that's how people's brains can stay open enough to realize that maybe they haven't arrived at the conclusion they want. Maybe their behavior actually is not in line with their values. But if you attack them, they'll never get there, right? They will instantly throw up a wall and they won't be able to make that connection. They won't be able to change any of those behaviors. So if you can just gently start to ask some of those why questions, that's how you can help people. Either maybe you'll understand things in a new way, or maybe they'll be able to understand their behaviors a little bit better. So just think about a couple months from now, ideally when all this is over, what are they going to really remember? Are they going to remember that fact that you shared? Or are they going to remember the feeling around it? Are they going to remember how they felt when you shared it? Are they going to feel like, you know, in a time of crisis, I was really valued and I was really respected. We had a difference of opinion, but we still were able to have a good conversation about it. Or are they going to feel like it was such a time of panic and stress and you came down so harshly on them that they never want to talk about it again, that they feel like it's unsafe to have a deeper conversation with you. They feel like it's too scary, that they're going to be judged if they want to start talking about a value and a difference of opinion. So remember in the beginning, I said that that right now it's a time of crisis, right? So there can either be danger or there can be opportunity. So if we start to attack the people around us, it's really dangerous, because what we are doing is we're saying, I do not value you enough to accept you and your different behaviors. I do not respect you enough to try to understand where you're coming from. Very dangerous. This is what does lead to divorce, family splits, etc. But there's also an opportunity here. We all have time, right? We're not going out and doing stuff. We have time to say, you know, help me understand. Why is it that you're doing that? Why have you reached that conclusion? So there's such an opportunity for us right now to really deepen our relationships, not just with those people that we are quarantined with, but the people that are a little bit, that are our distant family, that are our distant friends. Even if they're different, you've got time now to find out why. Why are they different? What is it that makes them tick? What different values or different circumstances do they have in life that have led them to understand, or that have led them to that set of behaviors? Okay. So this is the second bit of homework I want you to do. Just take a minute and think about some of those distant family or friends, and especially the ones that you kind of feel like they're, you know, crazy for cuckoo puffs right now, and you're just not understanding them. Take a minute and think about, why is that? What's the difference there? What are some of the different values? And the next time you're talking with them, how can you have that conversation differently, in a way where you're not going to raise up their walls and immediately put them on the defensive where they feel like they're being judged? But what's a different way that you can ask that question? Okay. What's a way that you could begin that conversation with why? All right.
Hey, Claire, someone posted a question in the chat box.
Great.
I'll read it. If you're not sure, this is from Lisa, if you're not sure about why you feel some way that's not in line with someone else's idea, and the other person attempts to use that as why their opinion is right or more valid, and trusts to use that as a way to get their way or move ahead with an action, what do you do in that situation?
Okay, so let me make sure I understand that. About it's not in line, and the other person attempts to use that. So I think what you're talking about is that there are two different values here that are clashing, right? That there's a major difference of values, and they're saying that their opinion is right or more valid, and that you just have to trust that. Am I understanding that correctly? That there's a value clash, and that they're just saying you need to trust their opinion? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Great question. So I'm going to actually give the same answer, because I'm going to do one thing a little differently here. Okay, I'm going to share. One second. I'm going to try to draw on my screen. This is not going to end up well. I'm just giving you a heads up ahead of time. Okay, so with people, we really just see the tip of the iceberg, right? And that tip of the iceberg, I'm trying to draw on my screen, guys. I know this is not going well. I apologize. Okay, so what we see above the iceberg is their position. This is what I want. This is what I'm doing. And if we can go one level down, that's the interest. Okay, that's how we start to find out why. So the position, this is the what. This is what they are doing. They have completely isolated themselves in the house and duct taped everything, and they're not allowing their kids to call anybody because they're afraid that the virus can be passed over the phone. I don't know. So they have gone completely quarantine. The interest would be something like, why? Help me understand why you're doing that. Where is that fear coming from? Help me understand your behavior. But then if you really, so in the situation that you mentioned where you're having a values clash, what you want to do is try to go even one more level down. Okay. So now I want to get down into their values. I want to understand, what is it that's making you feel this way? Okay, I understand that you're scared, but why? Then you understand, oh, they had a grandfather pass away from a pandemic or something like that, something that is causing this extreme deep fear. And values are typically tied to our identity. So it's the what, the why, and the who. So again, the position, that's just what you see on the outside, right? That is the tip of the iceberg. That's what somebody is saying. If we can dig a little bit deeper and find out why, but then if you want to actually make any progress with this person, if you want to take this time to deepen your relationship, that's when you need to go a little bit deeper. Understand why, understand how this ties into their identity. Why is this so important to them? Because if they do not feel validated on that really deep values level, then they will never be willing to either change their behavior or to accept something different in your behavior, right? Once that values piece is validated, and once they can understand your value, and ideally there's some overlap there, then once that piece happens, then you can start to really deepen your relationship. You can accept two different behaviors. I wanted, how do I clear this? There we go. Clear all drawings. There we go. I want to explain this one other way very quickly. I'll do this so fast. All right. Again, no drawing skills. I totally apologize. This is supposed to be an elephant. See? Look at that happy elephant. Okay, so those are his legs. We'll go for legs. So when we are trying to change people's behavior, change their ideas, change their values, what we need to do is speak to the elephant. That is the main part of your brain. That is the emotional part of you. That is your heart. That is your soul. That is the part of you that actually controls all of your actions. But we don't realize that, right? And so typically when we're trying to change people's minds or persuade them or help them to understand something, we mess up. And instead, we talk to the writer. Hey, look at me. I'm the writer. The writer is persuaded by logos. In other words, I'm going to give you all of these facts. I'm going to spout all these facts at you and all these numbers and try to change your mind that way. No, so ineffective. But we keep trying, right? We think, oh, if I just explain these facts more, they will arrive at the same conclusion that I have reached. Still doesn't work. We're trying to change the writer, and the writer might be deciding to go in a different direction and understand where you're coming from. But the elephant, in other words, their heart, their feelings, their memories, their passion, the elephant is still going in the other direction. So if you really want to persuade someone, if you really want to help them to understand or understand where they're coming from, instead you need to use pathos, okay? So logos, this is like logic. Pathos, that's the emotions. That's things like empathy. I have given up on that one. Empathy, feelings, they want to be validated, even humor. So if you're trying to help somebody really understand where they're coming from or help them to be more in touch with their emotions, it does zero good to explain all of the numbers, let's say the coronavirus. It doesn't do any good to explain the numbers and facts about coronavirus, right? Instead, where you want to come from is a place of, hey, I'm really nervous about this. My husband just got over pneumonia and his lungs are really weakened. And I can just picture myself having to put the kids to bed at night, explaining to them that daddy's in the hospital and we can't go see him. And he is locked off in a ward. And honestly, it just breaks my heart. And it has made me very afraid, right? And so now I'm using pathos. I'm starting to use emotion and visual imagery to try to sway that elephant in a way that is 10 times more effective than the logos, than trying to persuade just the rider. Okay, so in order to tie into somebody's values, you really need to use that imagery, that emotion, and get down at their very deepest core level. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. I will go through this very quickly now. Let's go back to my screen. There we are. All right, so very quickly, communicating with coworkers. Remember that right now things are changing for everybody. Okay, and the only way to maintain a good relationship with your coworkers right now is just to be transparent and just to acknowledge what's going on. I am assuming that most of you have seen the video of the guy that was Zooming and then stood up and he was in his underwear, right? Hilarious. I think Allison, you shared that with me. Hilarious. And the only thing that you can do is laugh about it, right? And use this again as an opportunity to deepen your relationship. I really wanted to include both of these quotes. The first was by a Holocaust survivor, Emil Fackenheim. And he said, the only way that we kept our morale was through humor. The only way that they survived the concentration camps was by telling jokes, was by relating to other people. Because if you use humor, then you're letting people know I'm still in here. It's still me. I am still scared. And it helps to bring people together, as well as, I don't want to get into the science behind it, as well as all of these wonderful things that it does for our immune system, right? It brings us hope. It brings us joy. When we laugh, it starts to decrease our cortisol levels, our stress levels. So absolutely, if it means that tonight you need to sit down and watch a comedy with your family, absolutely. Gentle humor, whenever you're speaking with your coworkers, whenever you're using Zoom, etc., try to make sure you can throw some of that in. So communicating with self. I want to make sure we have time for this piece. Man, this is a hard time. So give yourself some grace. Set realistic expectations. Maybe right now is not the time to train for a marathon or become Gordon Ramsay. Instead, set some realistic expectations. Next, give yourself some space. So this is your third bit of homework. What exactly does that mean to you? Because it means something different for everybody. Do you need to go for a run by yourself? Do you need to take a bath by yourself? Do you need to get some headphones and just say, okay, mom needs 5 minutes or dad needs a timeout? Do you need to get up earlier before the kids so you have a couple minutes to take care of yourself before the day? The next one is acknowledge the bad, right? Normally when things are hard, you've got people around you. You can go vent to somebody at the gym. You can vent to your coworker at the water cooler, and somebody can validate you and say, oh man, that sucks. I am sorry that you're going through this, or that's not fair, or I can't believe you have to deal with this, or I can't believe he said that to you, or I can't believe she's treating you that way. We don't have that right now. So right now is your only time where you have permission to be a little bit schizophrenic and talk to yourself and say, man, this is really hard. And then say back, yeah, Claire, this is not fair. You should not have to be going through this. Or Claire, you're right, this is scary. And subconsciously, not as powerful, but subconsciously, it still works just a little bit to help yourself feel validated, to acknowledge this is hard. People are cranky. I don't like what's happening right now. And it's not okay. You should not have to deal with this. But you're going to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and try to get through it. But then also make sure that you acknowledge the good, right? You are rocking this. You are doing an amazing job of getting through a very scary, difficult time and holding it all together. And there are some opportunities that come from this, right? Some opportunities for growth to deepen your relationships. And maybe you needed to clean the pantry out anyway. So I want you to think for a second, what is it that you need during this time? Okay, very scary time. What is it that you need to be okay? What is it that you need to, you know how they say put your mask on yourself, right, before you put it on your kids and when you're in an airplane? What does that mean to you? Does it mean that you go for a run? Does it mean that you take a bath? What do you need right now to strengthen yourself to get through this? Okay, because that's how communication can be really powerful. If you feel strong enough so that you can pause when people vent at you and not yell back at them. If you feel like you're at peace enough to be able to absorb some of their barbs and not insult them back, but just say, hey, what's going on? help me to understand what you're dealing with here, right? We can't do that if we are constantly at our wits' end. So what is it that you need to be able to communicate well? Okay, so we've talked about what your needs are, your children's needs, okay, having their emotions named, your spouse's needs, right? What's their love language? What do they need right now to be okay? And then the pieces I want to end on, remember, give yourself space, give insight when you can. Oh, honey, it sounds like you're frustrated. Or, guys, I'm sorry, I'm just really on edge. Give me 5 minutes. And finally, give everybody grace. Give your kids grace, give your spouse grace, give your partner grace, give your family grace, give yourself some grace. This is a tough time. And also, let's laugh. Like we said, it is so elemental right now. It is so important. So I wanted to end on this. Does an apple a day keep the doctor away? It depends on how good your aim is. So I've seen a couple questions come in via chat. I know that we are running low on time. Oh, thank you. Okay, so I know that we're running low on time, but I wanted to make sure that if people did have questions, that we had time for those. I had one question come in. Somebody said, how do you bring up a difficult conversation? Okay, if you need to ask somebody about something. So they just sent this to me directly. So I'm going to reply back. I like the idea of having an ELF conversation, ELF. In other words, if you need to talk to somebody about something hard, bring it up as quickly as you can, right? Don't let it fester. Second, try to be as logical, in other words, as factual and informative as you can, instead of letting yourself spiral into, well, you must be lazy, or it's because you hate me, or adding on all this extra fluff, okay? Just try to stick to the message and have it be a final conversation. In other words, once you've talked through something with somebody, you've got to be willing to let it go. You can't bring it up again in another fight, okay? Because you don't want people to treat you that way. So final means that I am making a commitment to not use this as ammo again in fights, but more than that, I am making a commitment to not continue to see you through that filter, okay? I'm frustrated that you didn't take the garbage out, but we've talked through it. I realize you're not a lazy person. And so I am making the commitment to pull those filters off my eyes, to not continue to see you through that lazy filter. But we had a conversation about it. It's final, it's over. So I am committing to letting go of that view of you. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. When you're having a difficult conversation, ELF conversation, early, logical, and final. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment. If we have any other questions, please send those in via chat, or you can shout them out here, and I'll be happy to stay a couple more minutes, but I know I ran over, so I can let the rest of you go. Thank you everybody so much. I hope that you are all staying well. I hope that you are staying happy and having some good times, and really taking this as an opportunity to spend time with your family and to take care of yourself. So peace and blessings, everybody. Good to see you.
Claire, thank you so much.